He was just a kid. But something in his eyes told me he wasn't playing pretend. Ethan Miller stood in the hallway of Jefferson Middle School with a red bandana tied around his head, a plastic toy knife strapped to his thigh, and a papier-mâché grenade hanging from a duct tape belt. His tank top was frayed on purpose. Camouflage pants sagged slightly at the waist, and his boots, too big for his feet, clomped against the linoleum like they had somewhere important to be. He was nervous, but also proud. It was Hero Week at school, a themed celebration where students were encouraged to dress like someone who inspired them. Most of the other boys had chosen football players or Marvel superheroes. The girls favored singers, astronauts, and the occasional Wonder Woman. But Ethan didn't choose a comic book hero. He chose Rambo, not because of the weapons, not because of the muscles, because Rambo survived, because Rambo was alone, and still made it. The moment he stepped through the front doors, silence rippled down the hallway. Some students laughed. Others stared. A teacher murmured something under her breath. Ethan kept walking, chin high. But halfway through second period, Principal Linda Walker entered his classroom, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. "Ethan Miller, come with me." He didn't understand. He hadn't broken any rules. The weapons were fake. The outfit complied with dress code, right? In the principal's office, his mother, Rebecca, had already arrived. She wore blue scrubs, her hair hastily pulled back, eyes worried beneath her exhaustion. "What's going on?" she asked, scanning the room. "Is he hurt?" Principal Walker shook her head. "No, but this kind of attire sends a dangerous message. Guns, knives, camouflage. You know how that might look to other students, especially in this climate." Rebecca blinked. "It's Hero Week." "Yes, and this is not the kind of hero we promote here." Ethan's hands clenched at his sides. "Rambo's a hero," he said softly. Principal Walker's expression didn't change. "You're suspended for 3 days, Ethan. We'll reconvene after the break." Rebecca drove him home in silence. She wasn't angry, just confused. And hurt. For him. In the back seat, Ethan removed the red bandana from his head. His hands trembled slightly. He said nothing, even when they passed by the billboard near the elementary school, the one with cartoon superheroes and the slogan, "Be bold, be brave, be you." It didn't feel like that was true anymore. At home, Ethan logged into his YouTube account. He didn't post much, just the occasional toy review or random thoughts. But this time, he hit record. His face filled the screen, bandana still in place, voice shaking. "Today I got suspended for dressing like someone who helped me, someone who made me feel less alone. I don't care if people laugh. I don't care if they think it's dumb. Rambo was strong and quiet, and people thought he was dangerous too. But maybe some of us just need to be seen." He paused. "My name's Ethan Miller. I'm 11 years old, and Rambo is my hero." He clicked upload, then turned off the lights. By morning, the video had 14 views. By lunchtime, it had 3,200. By the time school let out, it had passed 1 million. Comment sections exploded. Some called him brave, others mocked him. But one comment stood out, a verified check mark, a name no one expected, Sylvester Stallone. It read, "Hey Ethan, I saw your video. And let me tell you something. I've played a lot of tough guys, but what you did takes real courage. Rambo would be proud of you. Keep your head up, kid. I'm sending you something." Sly. Rebecca stared at the screen in disbelief. Ethan covered his mouth with both hands. The room went silent except for the hum of the laptop. But the real shock came 2 days later, when the doorbell rang and a delivery man handed over a brown package with no return address. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, was something Ethan never imagined he'd touch in his lifetime. Rambo's original headband. And underneath it, a handwritten note that simply said, "This belongs to a real fighter now." But not everyone thought it was inspiring. And not everyone at Jefferson Middle was happy with what came next. At Jefferson Middle, the atmosphere had shifted. Some students looked at Ethan with wide-eyed awe, whispering his name like he was some kind of urban legend. Others, the ones who followed the rules without question, saw him as a problem. It wasn't long before the teachers started acting differently too. Some smiled and nodded as he passed. Others avoided his gaze entirely, their smiles tight, forced, as if acknowledging him would be a political statement. The hallways were no longer neutral ground. But Ethan didn't feel like a hero. He felt like a kid walking a tightrope, too afraid to look down. During lunch, Ethan sat alone. Jake and a few other boys from his grade swaggered past his table, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Hey, Rambo, where's your gun, man? You gonna rescue us from math class or something?" Laughter erupted. Ethan kept his eyes on his tray, pushing around cold mashed potatoes with his fork. His stomach twisted, but he refused to give them the satisfaction of a reaction. Therefore, when Olivia slid into the seat across from him without a word, he almost didn't notice. "Don't listen to them," she said, unpacking her sandwich. "They're just jealous. You're famous now." He gave a half-hearted smile. "Yeah, famous for getting suspended." Olivia shrugged. "Better than being famous for being boring." Ethan laughed, a real one this time. It surprised even him. At home, the situation was no better. Rebecca received an email from Principal Walker. "In light of recent events, we believe Ethan's presence may cause unnecessary disruption to the learning environment. We strongly encourage you to consider alternative educational options. In other words, he wasn't welcome back." Rebecca sat at the kitchen table, head in her hands. Ethan leaned against the doorway, clutching the headband Stallone had sent him. "I didn't mean to cause trouble," he whispered. Rebecca looked up, eyes glassy but determined. "You didn't. You told the truth. And sometimes..." She reached out, squeezing his hand. "Telling the truth scares people." Meanwhile, online, Ethan's video continued to snowball. Talk shows picked it up. News outlets spun headlines. 11-year-old defies school after suspension. Sylvester Stallone backs courageous student. Hero or hazard? The debate over Ethan Miller. Arguments erupted in comment sections. Some hailed him as a symbol of individuality and resilience. Others accused him of promoting violence, misunderstanding his intent completely. But there was something deeper happening beneath the noise. People began sharing their own stories. Veterans, bullied kids, adults who never forgot being silenced when they were young. Stories poured in, thousands of them, turning Ethan's page into a living, breathing monument to unseen battles. One evening, as Ethan scrolled through the flood of messages, one particular video popped up in his DMs. It was from Sylvester Stallone again. This time, a full 2-minute recording. The actor sat in a sunlit backyard, wearing a casual t-shirt and baseball cap. "Hey, champ, I wanted to say something face-to-face. I created Rambo a long time ago, but you lived him. See, Rambo isn't about fighting. It's about surviving when no one thinks you can. It's about standing your ground when it'd be easier to quit. And that's exactly what you did. Don't ever let anyone shame you for surviving the way you know how. You're not alone, Ethan. You're never alone." Ethan watched the video 3 times before finally pressing his forehead against the desk. Overcome, he didn't feel alone anymore. Therefore, he decided he couldn't just disappear. If they didn't want him back at Jefferson Middle, fine. He would bring his story somewhere it could matter. Rebecca spent the next week making calls, filling out applications, attending meetings. And just when it seemed hope was slipping away, a charter school, Riverside Academy for the Arts, reached out. They offered Ethan a scholarship, full tuition covered, an open invitation to join their creative media program. No conditions, no warnings, no apologies. But before he left Jefferson Middle for good, Ethan had one last thing to do. He asked Rebecca to drive him back, not to go inside, but to stand in front of the building. He wore the Rambo headband again, held a homemade sign high over his head. It read, "Heroes don't always fit the costume." Some students who were leaving the building stopped to stare. A few even cheered. Jake flipped him off from the bus window, but Ethan just smiled wider, because he finally understood. It wasn't about being Rambo. It was about being Ethan. Later that night, Rebecca found him sitting on the front porch, head tilted back, looking at the stars. "You okay, baby?" she asked. Ethan nodded slowly. "Yeah, he said. "I'm better than okay." But fate wasn't finished testing him yet, because fame, even the quiet kind, always comes with a price. Riverside Academy felt like a different world. Instead of metal detectors and fluorescent lights, there were murals on every wall, bright wild colors bursting from brick and concrete like living things. Instead of suspicion, there were handshakes, high fives, laughter that didn't sound rehearsed. Ethan walked through the front gates gripping his backpack, half expecting someone to stop him. But no one did. No one asked him to take off his headband. No one whispered behind cupped hands. Here he was just Ethan. His first day, he met Ms. Carter, a journalism teacher with a crooked smile and eyes that missed nothing. She didn't ask why he transferred. She didn't mention the news stories. She just handed him a battered notebook. "Tell the truth," she said, winking. "Even if your hands shake." It was the first time in months Ethan felt the ground solid under his feet again. But the world outside Riverside Academy hadn't forgotten him. One evening, while he was doing homework, Rebecca called him into the living room. The TV was on. A news anchor's voice filled the space. In today's controversial update, the Springfield School District faces backlash after documents reveal internal discussions about expelling Ethan Miller prior to public scrutiny. Hidden emails, recorded meetings, proof that the administration had planned to force Ethan out from the beginning. The story exploded. Cable news, blogs, TikTok. Everyone had an opinion. Some praised Ethan as a symbol of truth-telling. Others weaponized him, turning his name into hashtags for causes he barely understood. Ethan felt the walls close in again. He hadn't asked for this. He hadn't wanted to be anyone's martyr. He just wanted to dress like his hero on Hero Day. Was that really so dangerous? Therefore, he found himself standing at a crossroads. Ms. Carter noticed. After class one afternoon, she pulled him aside. "There's a journalism contest coming up," she said. "National, big exposure, scholarships." Ethan frowned. "Why would anyone want to hear more from me?" Ms. Carter tilted her head. "Because truth doesn't ask permission. It just needs someone brave enough to say it." At home, Ethan sat at his desk, staring at a blank page. He could write about anything, anything. His fingers hovered over the keys. Finally, he began. "They told me Rambo was too dangerous, but the real danger isn't a costume. It's a world that tells kids to be brave, then punishes them for it." The essay poured out of him, raw and clumsy and honest. When he finished, he wasn't sure if it was good. He only knew it was real. Meanwhile, in Springfield, Mrs. Walker resigned under pressure. Jake's father withdrew from the school board. The old world, the one that had tried to crush Ethan, was crumbling in slow, reluctant pieces. 2 weeks later, Ethan received an envelope in the mail. He stared at it for a long time before opening it. Inside, "Congratulations, Ethan Miller. Your essay has been selected as a finalist for the United Voices Youth Journalism Award. Please join us at the National Freedom of Expression Summit in Washington, D.C." Ethan's chest tightened. D.C. airplanes, crowds, lights. Another stage he didn't ask for. Another mountain to climb. At dinner, he showed Rebecca the letter. She cried, again. But this time, there was no fear behind her tears. Only pride. "You don't have to go if you don't want to," she said, voice thick. Ethan shook his head slowly. "I want to." He wasn't the same boy who had sat in the principal's office, small and scared, feeling like a mistake. He was someone different now, not Rambo, not a symbol, just Ethan. And that was enough. On the night before the trip, Olivia called. They hadn't talked much since he left Jefferson Middle, but her voice was warm, steady. "I saw your essay," she said. "It's amazing." "Thanks," Ethan mumbled, feeling heat creep up his neck. "You're amazing," she corrected softly. There was a long pause. Neither of them rushed to fill it. Sometimes, silence said everything. At the airport, before boarding his flight to Washington, Ethan opened his backpack one last time. Tucked between his books and notebooks was the Rambo headband. Worn, faded, still carrying the weight of that first stand he had taken. He smiled, folded it carefully, and tucked it back inside, not because he needed it anymore, but because it was part of his story. part of how he had gotten here. As the plane lifted into the night sky, Ethan pressed his forehead against the window. Below him, the world glittered like 1,000 tiny possibilities. And somewhere, in the dark, he knew he wasn't alone. He never had been. But the most unexpected moment of his journey still waited for him in Washington. A moment that would challenge everything he thought he knew about courage and forgiveness. Washington, D.C. was colder than Ethan expected. The air had a bite to it, the kind that slid under your coat and made your teeth chatter. But standing in front of the towering marble columns of the Freedom Center, he barely noticed the chill. His hands were sweating inside his jacket pockets. All around him, other finalists buzzed with excitement, posing for photos, rehearsing their speeches. Ethan felt small again, like he didn't belong. But he remembered what Rebecca had told him that morning before he boarded the plane. You don't have to be the loudest voice in the room. You just have to be the truest. Inside, the auditorium was massive. Bright lights, cameras, rows and rows of strangers. He clutched the folded copy of his essay, his heart beat loud in his ears. A woman with a clipboard called his name. "You're up next, Ethan." He nodded, throat dry, walked toward the stage, step by trembling step. The stage was bigger than he expected, the microphone taller than he imagined. He adjusted it, hands shaking visibly. 1,000 eyes stared back. But when he opened his mouth, something incredible happened. He wasn't scared anymore, because he wasn't speaking to them. He was speaking for every kid who had ever been told they didn't fit, for every person who ever felt small, or strange, or wrong for being themselves. His voice rang out, steady and clear. "When I wore a costume to school, I wasn't trying to scare anyone. I was trying to show the world who I wanted to be. Someone strong enough to stand alone. Someone brave enough to be different. I didn't expect to be punished for it. But maybe that's what real courage is. Doing the right thing even when the world misunderstands you." The room went quiet. Not the heavy, judgmental silence he remembered from Jefferson Middle. A different kind. A listening silence. A respectful silence. He finished, heart hammering, hands trembling. There was a beat of stillness. Then, a single clap. Then another, and another, until the entire auditorium rose to its feet, applauding. Some people wiped tears from their faces. Some cheered. Ethan stood there, dazed, trying to memorize the moment forever. Because it wasn't about winning. It was about being heard. And for the first time, truly, he was. After the ceremony, he stepped off the stage into the lobby. The crowd buzzed around him. Congratulations, handshakes, flashes of cameras. But one figure stood apart, tall, familiar. A leather jacket slung over broad shoulders, a lopsided smile beneath a familiar gray stubble. Sylvester Stallone. In person. Ethan froze. Stallone stepped forward, extending a hand. "You did good, kid," he said, voice rough but kind. "Real good." Ethan shook his hand, feeling the calloused strength of someone who had fought more battles, real and fictional, than he could imagine. "Thank you," Ethan whispered. Stallone leaned down slightly, voice low. "You didn't just wear the headband. You earned it." The two posed for a picture, Ethan in his plain jacket, Stallone in his iconic leather. And when the flash went off, Ethan felt something settle inside him. Not pride, not fame. Something simpler. Peace. Later that night, back in his hotel room, Ethan sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling through the pictures on his phone. He stopped at the one of him and Stallone, smiled, then opened his battered notebook and began to write again. Not because anyone asked him to, not because there was a contest, because that's what he did now. He told the truth, even if his hands shook. When he returned to Springfield, everything felt smaller. The houses, the streets, even Jefferson Middle. He walked past it one afternoon, just because, and paused outside the chain-link fence. Kids ran across the playground. Teachers called roll. The world kept spinning. And he realized something. He didn't need them to say he mattered. He already knew. The next morning, he posted one last video to his channel. No tears, no anger, just him, sitting on the front porch, wearing the Rambo headband one final time. I'm not Rambo. I'm not a soldier. I'm not a headline. I'm Ethan Miller, and that's enough. He smiled into the camera, clicked upload, and stepped outside into the sunrise, ready for whatever came next. Last dab, looping final line. He was just a kid. But something in his eyes told me he wasn't pretending. He never had been. Thank you so much for watching. Your time means everything to us, and we hope this story moved you as much as it moved us. If it did, please consider leaving a comment, sharing the video, and subscribing to the channel, because powerful stories deserve to be heard. Until next time, stay kind, stay strong, and never underestimate the impact of one small act of courage.